Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over weapon upgrading with ingots in Gems of War, particularly the top 10 best ones to do with legendary ingots. As far as all the other ingots, you don't really need to worry about what specifically you use them on for the most part. Mainly because all the epics and below you should be using on whatever one you need for your kingdom upgrades. Whenever any of them pop up with one of the requirements to actually go and upgrade a weapon, you just go click on this and it shows all the ones that you need to do. And that's basically what you use all the epic and belows for specifically. All the mythics you basically just put into Dawnbringer or you save them. So that basically only leaves the legendary ingots as the only main one you really need to allocate specifically. So as far as actually accumulating them, there is 3 methods at the moment. There will be more methods coming in the future, but at the moment there is only 3. The first one or 2 of them are located in PvP. Any battle you do in PvP or Arena has the chance of giving a legendary ingot at a very, very low rate. You can get 2 consistently per week by doing a small amount of PvP battles. You can get 2 right over there, which you'll go and accumulate pretty much automatically just by doing a little bit of PvP. And lastly, where a good majority of legendary ingots are currently accumulated is during raids and invasion weeks from your guild event, which is basically 2 out of the 3 weeks, every single 3 weeks. The only week that doesn't have it is Guild Wars. There'll be an event where you can go and actually specifically get them via gems. It ends up costing 250 gems total in order to reach tier 3, and this ends up giving 6 legendary ingots and comes down to a cost of 41.7 gems each if you're just counting the ingots themselves. Then it goes down to the cheapest amount of 500 gems for 13 total, which comes out to 38.5 gems each. And then if you wanted to go all out, which would give you a total of 21 during these raids and evasion weeks, it will cost you 850 gems, and you'll end up getting they will cost 40.5 each. So 41.7 each, 38.5 each, and 40.5 each, if you're just checking it for only the legendary ingots. For the most part, the best value is technically just to go for tier 3, since you end up getting the unique troop, you end up getting the weapon, and then you still get some ingots. I've personally lately been going all the way into the max just to go and end up getting it for the event itself, as well as just to make sure we keep getting a lot of ingots. So let's go do that real quick. So as you can see here, we'll end up getting 6 from this. We end up getting the weapon as well, 7 from this, and then the other 8 from this, for a total of 21, basically every raid and evasion week. So let's go into things that you would actually end up using these for. So if we go over to games and then go over, or not games, my bad, go over to troops and then go over to the weapons and select them based on rarity. Actually, we'll just go type them in manually. So let's go over the first one. First things first. I'm going to be doing them in best to worst order, since obviously that'd be basically the order in which you upgrade them. First up is Divine Protector if you own it. Currently, this is not a weapon that you can actually obtain if you don't already own it. It was available a couple months back, kind of like how that one weapon we just got, we end up obtaining from the event. Those weapons aren't really reobtainable, or at least they haven't added a new way to reobtain them. So when they come in, they're not available again, or at least until they add some kind of feature where they will be. And this is one of those weapons, unfortunately. But nonetheless, it is actually one of the strongest weapons in the entire game, and it just gains a ridiculously huge benefit. It ends up gaining Barrier, gets to explode on yellow, which can sometimes actually be bad, but it guarantees you a set amount of mana every single time. It has Cleanse, and it gains a little bit of armor, which does synergize it, given that it's just really tanky overall. So very, very nice upgrades that you have. Those 3, of course, being the main components of what it's actually doing, and into the fact that it works really well into the Divine meta at the moment, because, of course, Divines are pretty much everywhere with Divine, Ishbala, and all that good stuff. But, yeah, definitely a really nice weapon to have. Creates a lot of reds and yellows, and, of course, you generally use it with 3 or 4 Divines if you're ever going to bother putting into a team. So, next one, as far as the best one to craft if you don't end up having that, and the main one you'd want to go for after if you do, is Mountain Crusher, either to +5 or all the way to max. One of the main reasons I've only done it to +5 is there are some teams ever so occasionally that you'll end up doing with a Mountain Crusher where you actually don't want a Brownstorm, but more often than not, that Brownstorm is going to be very, very useful. It's a brown weapon that explodes all browns, so obviously having more browns on the board would be very useful. It's very similar to that of a Gorgultha, except you get to use your hero with whatever perks you want to go use, so it's very versatile. You can gain a bunch of EXP, and it's just the absolute best mana generating weapon there is. Nothing outpasses it at this current moment in time. There are some troops that still can, but as far as actual cost to get a gigantic explosion, it is the absolute lowest, only costing a total of 6 mana, meaning you technically don't even need to set a banner to it. You just need to take one single Brown Surge, and boom, you'll be right at full mana, assuming you start with a half mana start, any hero class or any perk that is capable of doing that. So very, very strong in that regard. And let's move on to the next one. Next one is basically any Mang-like weapon including Mang itself. There are several that you could upgrade here, like Flesh Ripper, Hope's Crescent, other stuff like that. But for the most part, I mainly just stick with Mang. And main reason for this is just because it gives all the attack to one single thing, being your hero. And if you're using, let's say, something like a Titan, where you can keep gaining a barrier every single brown you take, into the fact that you can also take an extra turn to get Enrage, you're basically able to one-shot everything while also being able to constantly barrier, meaning you, in most battles, you can actually essentially just solo just with your hero if you get a good enough setup. So really, really nice weapon. For the most part, you don't need to max it though. The really big downside of this weapon is it doesn't really gain too much more after the fact. It just gains like a little bit of stats, which of course this late in the game is a little bit trivial. Anything that ever has like create a single red or create a single gem or stuff like that tends to be towards the weaker side, but nonetheless, it's still nice to get the standard little bit of upgrades here, simply because you do want to have those extra stats to utilize with the already strong weapon. Next up is one that I've been actually testing on the beta, because I didn't bother upgrading on my main account yet. I probably will soon. But Death Knell is insanely good. Someone brought this to my attention a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, it is really, really good. Aside from its fact it gains 2 magic, one thing that it has really going well for it is the fact that it has a bunch of explosions, 2 of them specifically, combined with the fact that it has a gain an extra turn at a 100% rate, assuming you're not frozen. So this thing just deals damage to the weakest enemy and then gains an extra turn. This on its own, kind of average, 14 mana cost, not really anything too over the top. But then if you take into the fact that it's an artifact combined with the traits that it has, artifact is good because you can get 4 magic on it with one of the trees. I believe Arcane, if I'm not mistaken, has a +4 magic that you can end up getting for it. So if you were using a purple hero class that has it, which I believe everything with Arcane almost has that, so that would be 9 total damage then on top of that. So it might seem a little bit low now, but you can get that 9 higher than the number that's currently showing. But other than that, if we go to the weapon upgrades, it gets some really, really nice stuff. As I mentioned, it already gets this 2 magic, it gets a little bit of lifesteal from the first enemy, but the main 2 that makes it really good is it destroys the Doom Skull and it explodes a random skull. So this will be 1 explosion, and potentially this could be a 2nd explosion. Basically with this, of course, a Doom Skull, even though it's only destroying the Doom Skull does explode itself. So even though this doesn't specifically say explode a Doom Skull, it technically is exploding a Doom Skull, since either or it will do the exact same thing, since it will automatically explode anyways. So yeah, basically 2 explosions, assuming there is both a skull and a Doom Skull on the board, which is quite a bit of mana, and you even gain some passive souls with it too. That's obviously not that big on it, but still, the double explosions into the automatic extra turn is what really makes it pretty powerful. Next up is similar to that of how you would use a Mountain Crusher, except this one would be more so as a damage source. So Bronzelock Pistol, it deals damage to an enemy and then destroys 5 random gems, but that is boosted based on all gold collected at a 4-to-1 boost ratio. So you can end up accumulating a lot more extra destroys simply by reaching the max gold capacity of 100, which would end up giving 25 extra destroys for a total of 30. And of course, you can raise that even higher with things like the merchant trait and stuff like that, anything that ends up raising the gold cap to give it even more of a boost ratio. What's really nice about getting this thing upgraded is 2 main things. One is it actually gets the extra destroy, so that's nice. But the main 2 that are really nice on it is the burn the first enemy and gain 10 gold. Oddly enough, that one is actually good on it. But the reason the burn first enemy is pretty decent is you're already destroying out a lot of the board and you're going to be clearing a lot of it. And there's a possibility you could get skulls, especially if you had a storm or something else going on. But basically, if you use this with a hero class that has 3 times skull damage to burning, you can just use this weapon, get them burning, then hit them with 3 times skull, kill it out, and repeat the cycle. You also get 5 free damage automatically, and it's 10 gold. Normally 10 gold would be pretty pitiful on a weapon, but on this weapon it's decent, of course, because it's actually boost ratioed based on gold, so it'll allow you to accumulate all the gold you need simply off the weapon itself if you really wanted to, instead of having to worry about another troop. And once this thing gets fully upgraded, especially if you had a few merchants or that one legend, Centric Sparkle Sack, that ends up giving the 100% extra gold, you can really clear out a lot of the board to the point where you can even potentially get enough of a gold bonus where you clear out literally the entire board. And if they were to ever nerf explosions, something like a Bronzelock Pistol will definitely start becoming meta, because everything that's destroyed counts for 100% of mana, whereas explosions are currently only 70%, and they're thinking about eventually maybe nerfing it to 60 or 50%. So if they ever were to do that, Bronzelock Pistol is basically the new Gorgotha, essentially. Just slightly more damaging, though a little bit more consistent, since you need to get the gold rolling before you can actually go and utilize it. Next up is Sceptre. Another decent mana generating one. It's not better than Mountain Crusher, though it's a different color than Mountain Crusher, so if you basically needed a blue version of Mountain Crusher, this is essentially what you would end up using. Main thing that's really relevant on this is the fact that it gains, 3 things are relevant. It cleanses itself, so you don't need to worry about any status effects. It gains 1 additional mana to all allies, which is always helpful. And other than that, it gains enchant. And since it only has a 9 mana cost, that means after 5 turns, it's already going to have all of the mana that you need. And it will just accumulate it all back. You just need to wait a few turns, and then boom, you already have it, even if you don't take any more mana. But it has a nice amount of board control. Basically, what it does is destroy all gem of a chosen color. So you just choose a color. Unfortunately, you cannot choose blue, but you can choose any color other than blue, and obviously not skulls or anything. So basically any of the other 5 colors, then you just click one of them, you'll get all the mana. If there's 10 reds, you get 10 mana, so on and so forth. And you're basically using this for board control. Unlike Mountain Crusher and some of the other options, this is actually board control, whereas most of the others are board clear. So you can use this to try to land cascades and stuff like that, and or just deny out a color that the enemy needs and other similar strategies. So it's definitely a nice weapon to have around. Next up is one that doesn't really get used, I don't think, really at all, though it does have some pretty decent potential. I didn't go over this weapon too much when it first came out, mainly because there was very few enchant options. But this weapon gains a bunch of life to yourself and then creates 5 green, boosted by each enchanted ally at a 3 times boost ratio. So basically, if your entire team was enchanted, that would, actually it doesn't count your hero, but if everyone other than your hero was enchanted, that'd be a total of a 14 green spam, which is definitely a very, very high amount to be able to get 14 gems of any kind onto the board. It does have a 12 mana cost, so it's not even relatively high either. But as far as its perks, main thing that makes it really good is it creates a green storm. You're creating 14 greens, assuming you have the rest of the team enchanted. On top of the fact that you have a green storm, you're exploding a green, so you're going to be able to utilize the storm. You're going to be getting more greens to fall down on your already heavy green board. And just overall, you're basically going to be handing an extra turn and utilizing the green storm to gain even more extra turn. And basically, the second you cast this thing, everything on your entire team is essentially going to be ready to go. And you could use this with 3 times Christine X if you really wanted to, or any other team that can kind of spam enchants over and over again. And also, speaking of enchants, also gains enchant to itself just from casting, meaning it basically perpetually has enchant once you finally get it going. So longest you would ever have to wait is 6 turns, assuming no mana drains. And it also gains a little bit of life on top of the life that it already gains to make it even tankier. So you could even use it as a front line if you really wanted to, or as a second slot to make sure it kind of tanks for your team. And let's go into the next one. So next one is another one that some people might not have, unfortunately, but it is pretty good. It was actually available last week in the little pack thingy, if any of you bothered to get it. I think it was in the little $5 thingy if you haven't gotten it before, but that was last week. But what it does, it's not the greatest thing out there, but it's a red-purple weapon. It's the only red-purple weapon, for whatever reason, currently in the game that hits all enemies for full value. So that in itself actually makes it pretty good value. It also steals 1 random skill from all enemies. That's not too relevant, though if it hits something like magic, that can definitely be useful, since that's 4 additional damage. But the main thing on here that's pretty nice is the fact that it has the 1 explode and the fact that it hits all enemies. Really strong, has a little bit of extra drain onto the opposing team, has a little bit of stat reduction, and also disease them. And the combination of a disease into the mana drain makes it so it'll be a lot harder for them to actually accumulate their mana, and you even get more of your own mana back, so you'll be able to get up a little bit quicker. So that combination of things definitely makes it quite a bit stronger than what it would normally be. Next up is basically the version of that if you didn't own that, and that is Black Manacles. Black Manacles unfortunately doesn't gain as big of a benefit, but it does gain, of course, the standard little bit of magic from its things here, 2 magic there. But the other thing that makes it somewhat okay is it creates 1 single purple, which normally would be bad, but it also destroys 3 purple, and with those 3 purple, you could possibly get some kind of board that will actually be in your favor. It still has the same thing as the other one, it diseased the first enemy, and it still has the stat reduction onto the first enemy. So the main thing with this isn't really going to be too much, but you're gaining a little bit of your mana back guarantee every single time. Pretty minuscule amount, but still more than normal. But it's mainly because Black Manacle is already so good to begin with that getting a little bit more benefit on it is pretty nice. Black Manacle is one of the best AoE weapons in Gems of War right now. One of the main reasons for this is it has a 20% chance to devour and already has pretty decent damage. It also fills in the brown gap because there aren't too many good brown AoE weapons at the moment, whereas most of the other colors are pretty much covered. So kind of fits in there nicely, and you tend to spam it out quite a bit. And if you get a single devour, you pretty much just auto-win the battle on most battles when you're using Black Manacles. And last but not least, as the 10th one, is Prismatic Orb. There are 2 weapons in the game that covers all colors. There is Prismatic Orb and Imperial Jewel is the other one. But of the 2, this one is definitely the best. There are only 2 things in the entire game that actually cover all the colors, and that's those 2 things. So if you were to use one of them, you'd be using specifically Prismatic Orb because it's way superior compared to the other option here. It's not really the greatest of perks that you really get from this. It's mainly the fact that it's better then it's basically your only option. If you want to cover like every single color in the game, you basically plop this in the last slot, use it with like a Rowan, Guard's Avatar, maybe like a Bombot or something that boosts based on armor really well. And you can kind of keep spamming this, even if you weren't using it with a team that necessarily needed armor, though ideally you would. Ideally with Rowan, it's the cheapest thing. You get it from Forest of Florence for free. But still, you can get things like a lot of gold off it. You can get treasure maps off of it. Pretty nice. It still gives 1 mana to all other allies, and you end up getting the 2 random to his skill. So, of course, while not the most over-the-top kind of perks, as far as anything that covers literally every color in the game, this is what you'd be running and what you'd want to max if you did want to go down that route. But anyways, guys, that'll pretty much wrap it up for this video. If you still have any other questions about the weapon upgrade or anything of the such, or how to accumulate ingots or anything, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Anyways, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye!